Okay. I'm happy to see y'all. Okay. So, welcome. Um, as I mentioned, we have people here from DOH who actually put together some of these exit plans with you all. So we have Lee Shield Church, we have Katie Durand, we have Kara Zachichi, and we have Diana Barube. So welcome, and
This,
we're happy to see you.
I don't have.
Okay. Katie, you know you're unmuted, right? It's fine with me, but just no, because sometimes we hear phone calls that we
Hang
probably shouldn't
on.
hear.
Shh, wait, oh, sorry.
Okay. All right. So I'm Andrea White. This is Liz Isaacs. Liz is going to wave at you, and we're from Housing Innovations. And we're going to do this training on exit planning. So the goals of the training are to get people moving a little faster, and we're going to talk about that and acquaint people with the expectations of rapid rehousing. So please keep your cameras on as much as possible. I know sometimes people aren't camera ready. It's fine in the bigger group, though we love to see your faces. But in the smaller groups, please turn on the cameras because it's a little disorienting for your colleagues not to see anybody in their group. Um, Put your name as you'd like to be addressed on as your screen name. Liz is going to put the slides in the chat box momentarily. And just remember, we love interaction. And so please raise your hand. You can use emojis, you can type comments in the chat box, or you can just unmute and talk. We're really familiar with this more to material. We will cover everything, but we don't have to cover every slides. And discussion is always the best way to do it. And this training in particular, we're looking for your input. Okay? All right. So let's get started. So if you could type in the chat your name, your role, your agency, your program, your location, and put in the chat if you have a favorite sweet treat. So the point of this, okay, I always resisted this sort of icebreaker in the past, but the point of this is so it's level setting. It's so people can think about something they really want and clear your minds for the training. So if you have a favorite sweet treat, you can call it out, you can put it in the chat, or you can just think about it. All right, great. Okay, so we have a couple of polls that I'm going to do, and it's basically it asks you how long you've been doing rapid rehousing and what your role is in rapid rehousing. I know you put it in the chat, but we want to see what the patterns are, and the easiest way to do that is polls. So I'm not trying to annoy you by asking you the same question twice, but that's why we're doing it. Does that make sense? All right, let me see if I can launch these polls. Here we go. There we go. Whoops. All right. Hmm. Okay, here we go. Nope. This is the wrong one. I can't find the polls. Ah, I put them in the other thing. All right. So you're already answering the roles question. Just as a shout out, how long you been doing rapid rehousing? How many people are 6 months or under? Just give me a thumbs up. Just give me anything. Anybody? No? Good. One. Okay. How many are about a year or under? Good. Okay. How many are 2 years to a year to 2 years? Okay. I'm seeing a couple of people. Looks like we got a good spread. How many are 3 years or even more? Right. Nobody. Oh, wow. Okay. I got a couple of big ones. All right. So we got a good mix. We got a lot of people that have been in this for a long time. We're going to be particularly relying on you guys um, in the small groups, but also to really add to this discussion. All right, let's talk about this for a minute. So this is the agenda. We're going to talk about the goals for the sessions. We're going to talk about warm handoffs. We're going to talk, and that's from the referring agency, so usually either outreach or shelter. We're going to talk about exit planning. We're going to give you a form for exit planning. We're going to talk about developing housing goals, increasing motivation, and then we're going to close up and do the next session. And the next session is the second part of this, which is housing planning and also doing some housing problem solving. Okay. So this session is based on, I don't know why that turned blue, but okay. This session is based on the experiences in rapid rehousing, both from those communities of practice and also from the trainings and the input that we've gotten from you guys. And basically, out of those trainings, we identified this pattern, which is because there have been some changes. And there have been some changes about how people request an extension on rapid rehousing, right? Past a year. And one of the things that was put in place is a form that you have to fill out. And that's what we built the exit planning form on, because what we found is when you had that conversation with people and when there was sort of a deadline, that what happened about an extension and people were clear how they got an extension, that people really started working on those exit goals usually about 10 months after rapid rehousing has started, or in other words, 2 months before it ended. And so a big question that people had is how can we move this forward? How can we not have people start working on those goals at 10 months, but have people working on those goals starting from day one? And this is a structure to hopefully make that possible. And we want people to really try it. And we also want your input. So it's about the process and it's also about making the process transparent. The other thing that's become increasingly clear is people don't really understand sort of what are the expectations of rapid rehousing, and it could be any number of reasons. Um, but that, understanding that rapid rehousing is a transitional program and that it is really limited to a year is something that people need to understand. And the idea is to get things together so you can move on. And I know that there was some confusion about bridging and all sorts of stuff, but everybody is not going to get a supportive housing voucher. Everybody is not going to get a Section 8 voucher. And how can we make that possible? And is it possible for people to move on? And it means creating and thinking about out of system resources. It means really having that conversation and giving people a time to adjust to what the reality is really important. So we're using the warm handoff from shelters and outreach to create this exit plan initially. And then the exit plan is used through the course of the rapid rehousing program, along with um, housing preferences identification, which is going to be important because likely some people are going to have to switch their housing resource. And that it also means that motivation. If people choose their housing, they're actually more motivated. It's hard to motivate people to stabilize in housing when this housing is not what they wanted. Okay. So it's focused on the initial introduction of exit planning, though I think most of you guys have seen it because I know the supervisors previewed it, gave us some feedback, and I know they tried it with your teams and we got some of that feedback from it. So we're going to ask you those questions. Um, and this is the process that we have arrived upon with your input to get this thing moving. Does that make sense? Is that a problem that people are seeing? Okay, I don't all talk at once. Here we go. Yes, no, maybe. Was that too confusing? Okay. All right, feel free. Whoops.
Can you
Yeah. Kind of what? Sorry, I didn't see who was talking.
hi, hi, it's
Hey,
Kimberly
Kimberly.
Douglas. Can you what was the question again?
Does this make sense? Are you seeing that pattern? Is this something you've identified that it's hard to get people moving on an exit plan, at least initially? And that one of the things is yes, yes, yes. Okay. All right. So this makes sense to people, right? Is it hard to get people moving on an exit plan? And so the idea is here is to put some structure around it to see if we can move that exit planning up. I don't know if you've been using that form that they were using in order to submit an extension, but I think that that actually got a lot of our attention because it seemed to really work.
Hey Andrea, I
Hey,
definitely agree that our clients put a lot more effort later in the program.
yeah.
When I first started the job, the model of housing first is what we went by.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, that is our job, I feel like, not establishing having a steady income and a solid plan was like detrimental to a lot of my clients because
Yeah.
they got the housing, they understood that they were getting the assistance, but the reality of them having to pay on their own, that was like a delay. So I definitely agree with you, but it's hard when the model was to house them first and still lingers to this day. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
with
think
you.
we're doing some elements of housing first, but I think that the part of housing first that people often miss is that housing first really had a lot of structure in it. And that housing first, because it was designed for stabilization in housing, had the expectations of the lease in it, though it wasn't always applied, right? I also think that housing first means we take one and and all. But I think that what we're trying to do is we're not trying to say don't take people without income, though I understand if people have income or have started on the income process earlier, it's a lot easier for them to be successful in rapid rehousing. I get that. But I think that part of this is also to involve the shelters in creating that expectation that this is time limited and that there's an expectation that people work towards more independence, right? There's also an expectation that though people may get housing initially, that is, they may not be able to maintain, and with the hope that they'll get a job or something. But as that doesn't pan out, earlier, we're going to take a look at that and take a look at the housing option that may better fit their experience and their working. Does that answer some of the questions that you're asking? Does that meet some of the expectations that you're looking for, Mr. Morales?
Me,
Yeah.
um, I have a lot to say to that, but
Okay.
I see where you're going. So
Okay.
that's the best reply I can give you.
Okay. All right.
Andrea, we have Miriam has her hand up.
Great.
Yes, so I was gonna make a rebuttal to Mr. Morales' comment. Y- I feel like so the way that I view housing first is like through Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Housing is like a basic need,
Right.
and after you fulfill that basic need, then we can work on like the other things. So personally, the way that I case manage is like I always tell my clients like after you get housed, we have to hit the ground running with the other things that you need in order to be successful. And I feel like with proper case management from intake, you should be and through every meeting, you should be reinforcing to your clients that this is not going to be a forever thing. This is going to be temporary. Granted that like our clients can sometimes not take this seriously until the 11th hour, but just to know that you did your best, make sure you're constantly reinforcing the thought that this is going to be a temporary program.
Right. So we're creating the expectation. So I think in answer, and I also saw a question from S. Smith, and that it said, would this mean that housing that for the first come, first served title would be no? Not necessarily. It doesn't mean we're going to reject people. But if people understand the temporary nature, people may reject rapid rehousing. And our job is to help them see how rapid rehousing could help them meet their expectations and get housed. Absolutely, we're going to add these things, but I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said that one of the things that's got to happen is the expectations have got to be clear, and that's what this does. You should also know that we are doing a training for the shelter to prep people for this exit planning. My program's only 3 months, so it's a little bit harder to find employment in a shorter period of time. Yeah, Stephanie, that's absolutely true. It's harder to find consistent employment in that time. 3 months is short. I'm not sure if that's a rapid exit problem, but rapid exit is usually for people that have an income. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I work with CSSD, so it's under probation. So they
Ah, it's
have
under
the yeah,
probation. Okay.
yeah.
So that it sounds to me like if people are not coming out of, is this jail or prison?
Either or. It could be either
Okay.
or, but they're on probation.
Okay. So part of it may be working with a probation officer is starting that process before they get released.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Because 3 months is a short period of time. And you're
Yeah.
right. People may get a job within 3 months, but it's hard for them to stabilize in a job, which is something that we want. Um, but that might be a slightly different problem. I think that this is really oriented to the rapid rehousing that it's up to a year at this point.
Right.
Okay. All right. Yep. Who wanted to say something? I'm sorry. Liz, do you see?
I have a question.
Of course.
My name is Maria.
Hi,
I
Maria.
work I'm rapid rehousing and I'm working all my cases that I have at the present they are undocumented people.
Yeah.
And most of my difficulties it is for them to understand that eventually gradually we're going to kind of increase the rent so at the end of the year of the program they'll be able to pay their rent. But the difficulty it is, they undocumented status, which is really a challenge for me and challenge for them,
Yes.
kind of stabilize them in a secure job where they can be able to continue be in the property, on the list. I'm trying to be as, we are working to found housing the most affordable, but that's not kind of the reality in their life. And it is like a no end resolution for them in this situation. They thinking, okay, we are going to secure for 1 year, but then what I'm going to do, go back to the street or go back to the shelter.
Yeah.
I'm trying to encourage them, to keep. We don't want them to go back in the same situation where
Of
they
course.
was before for a year. So any suggestion, because I'm running out of out of ideas.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things, Maria. One is there have to be specially tailored options for the population you serve. And if they don't have documents, it's harder and harder, and they're not entitled to any long-term assistance, right? So that employment is a big part of it. Trying to
Yep.
get status is a big part of it. Unfortunately, part of the immigrant experience is oftentimes sharing housing. We have got to look at those options to make them usable.
Y-
I know that some of the employment programs have some options, particularly the one in New Haven for people that are undocumented. And I think we need to really focus on those. Rapid rehousing is a unique resource because it's not a long-term option that if it's run by a not-for-profit, you can actually You don't have to check people's immigration status, at least right now. So it's something to think about. But I think that yeah, it's a complicated thing, and it's really more specific to resources for this population, and that's a conversation we should have. Um, but right now, what we're focused on is the process. But I think that you're thinking about the process and how it's going to affect your clients, which makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that that is really the key there is the resources.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was just
Um,
going to jump
i-
into
i-
that,
i-
Maria. If you want to give me your contact information, I'm happy to
but
connect you with other folks in your can because
yeah,
I think
mhm.
employment options more than anything. And I know Connecticut, you guys do, I'm here, we do a great job of sharing resources, but really just reaching out to your colleagues at every other agency in your town or city and saying, hey, what are you doing? Because it sounds cliche, but if you have that problem, so does someone else. And I think pooling resources, sharing
yeah,
resources, we have such great cans and good resources at the can level. So I would just call it out from the mountaintop and say, what are people doing? And just keep asking. But and if you send me your contact information, I'm glad to connect you up with
Thank you,
your
Liz. I
colleagues in the
will.
area that I know are also tackling
great.
these
One of the thing is, yes, we are doing sharing housing if they are single, but
Yeah,
also I have families, that
yep,
unfortunately cannot be kind of sharing because they have minors, their family with minors kids in the household. But yes, I'm going to put in the message. I'm
Yeah.
going to put
Yeah.
my
I'll look.
information.
And
Thank
then
you.
yes, of course. And then I don't want to forget Danielle's been very patient.
great. Danielle.
I'm so sorry. I was just talking about, I have to run back because you guys were talking about it when we were talking about the planning with individuals when we first enter rapid rehousing, because that's part of the process and the paperwork. And then we're talking about individuals obtaining employment, because that's one of the main goals that we
Mm-hmm.
set.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult because everybody's their own individual, and we do recommend different things. And it's hard. And I understand people have children, different ages, and babysitting and everything else like that.
Yeah.
Um, and what
It's
gets difficult is we have individuals who are enrolled into rapid rehousing, but they come with additional barriers
yep,
um, that
yep,
are hindering them from obtaining employment.
yep,
So it's
yep.
kind of hard because we're on this time limit and we're reinforcing to them like we're doing the recertifications and we're saying you have to be in employment and they're like, but who's gonna watch my kids? And my kid has this disability, this disability, this disability. And we're trying. Like I've sat on the phone with 211 to find resources for autism and ADHD throughout the state of Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And we're banging the wall, but I've received individuals who nothing was explained to me about them having these children with all these disabilities. And
Yeah,
yet
that's
they think
part of what we're going to talk about.
mm,
Absolutely, Danielle. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
that's
I
okay.
think that first of all, I want you as my case manager, right?
Why
I
is that?
appreciate you're going so far beyond, right? But the other part of this is that yes, the children have multiple challenges and there are multiple challenges for employment.
Mhm.
We have to figure out within a year whether it's realistic. If we can cobble together some benefits, if we can cobble together some part-time employment, if we can cobble together some daycare maybe from family. And then we need to think about the housing options that are less expensive. And I
Right,
realize when it's a family, it's tough, but there is shared housing for families. How can we figure some of that out? I realize it's expensive to rent housing in Connecticut, but I think we need to look at all parts of the system.
right,
I also think that Katie put in, and I absolutely agree with this, is that housing first means that individuals are not required to meet preconditions, such as completing treatment, achieving sobriety before obtaining housing, right? However, it doesn't mean that service plan or work to address housing barriers should be postponed until housing placement. That's absolutely true. We want this to start as early as possible. In fact, it's really important that it start as early as possible. And we want the exiting planning to start on day one because we know that works, right? Everybody is not going to get the option that they absolutely want, but they may get something, right? And we've got to start talking about that and how we renegotiate these housing options is a big part of this, and that's actually what we're going to talk about in the second phase. But we're also going to start the discussion about housing preferences in this first session. So let's move on here unless somebody else wants to say something. Liz, do you see anybody? No? Okay. All right. Sorry, let me move that. Okay. All right, let's go. Whoops. All right, I want to talk about the warm handoff, right? The warm handoff is between the workers in the shelter or outreach or whoever refers in. So in your case, it might be probation and the participant and the worker that's going to follow up. So the worker from rapid rehousing. So everybody has to be in a warm handoff. Part of the reason for a warm handoff is to transfer engagement, right? Is that, people make a real connection with people early on when they're coming out of homelessness. So they're in shelters or they're in outreach, and we want to transfer that engagement, right? Because if you have to, you're going to have to do some re-engagement, but if you have to do full re-engagement, um, it's going to take a really long time, and we can vouch for each other, and that's what this really is. The warm handoff should also review the expectations of rapid rehousing. This will not be the first time they hear what the expectations are, right? But they may say, like, why didn't anybody tell me that? That doesn't mean they haven't heard it before. We need to give the shelter a little grace, but we are going to talk to the shelters about talking about what are the expectations of rapid rehousing. It's a temporary program, it's a year. These are the services. People need to have a plan. Okay, so it's also about planning the working relationship, is talking about what you can work on together that will further the goal of people being able to maintain their housing after rapid rehousing, right? So we want to know what they're looking to work on, what they're looking to follow up on. We also want to hear what they've been able to accomplish in the shelter. That's really important because those sorts of tasks can give us an idea of what people's strengths are, what they can work on. And that feeling of competence is going to help motivate people to continue this process. We're also going to talk about tenant goals and aspirations. And I just want to say a word about tenant goals and real goals, right? So I'm a big fan of motivational interviewing, but motivational interviewing needs a real goal, which nobody tells us, right? So that it's hard to motivate people, even if you do all that reflective listening and you know, and the and all the positives and negatives, the decisional balance sheet and the ruler and everything, if it's not a goal that people want. We need to motivate people to what they want. And I'll give you an example, okay? A lot of times in housing, one of the goals is housing stability, right? Okay. So if the goal is housing stability, what's that mean to them? And I'm here to tell you, housing stability is not exactly a sexy goal, right? Paying your rent is not exactly something people look forward to. But what's the reason why people want to stay in housing? And I want you to think about this, right? Because I hear all the time that people tell you, fine, if you're going to raise my rent, I'm just going to go back to the shelter. If we don't know why the person wants to stay in housing, we can't motivate them. So I'm going to ask you guys, and we've been through this before, is to use the so that principle. You want housing so that what? Right? So I want housing so that I can get a girlfriend or a boyfriend. I want housing so I can get a car. If you're looking for a reason people want housing, money, a honey, and wheels is usually covers it, right? So if people think about those things they want, and the housing goal is connected to that, you're going to find people more motivated, right? So it's got to be real goals. And then we've got to relate to them how this program of rapid rehousing and how staying in housing could help them reach those goals. Probably not immediately, but could help them make steps to the goals. So the other thing that that warm handoff should do is review what the case manager's role is. Both the case manager from outreach and for shelter, if they're going to continue to work with people, what is their role going to be? And the rapid rehousing worker, right? And also the housing specialist if they're the ones who are going to find people housing. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the tasks. And the idea is to really motivate people to use that service. It looks like the way that people are going, right? They may be mandated to have case managers. Maybe, right? We don't know. But even a mandated client, you need to engage them and you need to go this process because here's what a mandated client looks like. Did they show up for the thing? Yes. And they go like this. They just look at you, right? Unless you can motivate them to be a willing client, that's going to be hard. So it's still, you want to engage them. You're going to develop an exit plan and a service plan based on this conversation and the warm handoff and the information that you got. And you mentioned that you're not getting a lot of information, especially around the kids. We want to really encourage that and transfer over that information. And outreach and shelters should have some of that information. Maybe they don't know the exact diagnosis, but they've got some history and they know what this looks like. And we want to discuss how long the previous worker is going to follow up and what their role is. And we talked about that. Okay. So I want to divide people up into groups. You want to introduce yourselves because I'm not sure everybody knows each other. This is a big group. And we're going to talk about, we want you to talk about your current experience with warm handoffs. Are they helpful? Are they not helpful? What would make them more helpful? Could this be a more effective way of introducing people to the structure and the expectations of rapid rehousing? And how would you do that? And what would need to be put in place to make this happen? And I realize we need to do some work with shelters. You guys have been really clear about it, but it's not only shelters. It's also what we do in every step of the process, right? So you want to think about that. All right, I am going to divide people up into groups. Hold on a sec. Okay, so we have 36 participants. Is that right, Liz?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we're going to create these groups and then I'm going to share this PowerPoint into the groups. You ready? You got to affirmatively accept these groups. We're coming back in 10 minutes. Okay. Liz, you want to going to start the recording? And so anybody hear interesting things about people's experience with warm handoffs? Have you been doing it? Is it structured?
I would like to say, from the group that we just had, first of all, I want to say, Ms. Guzman, so my apologies for cutting out the group 30 seconds too early. I'm listening to you, but thank you very much for sharing what you were sharing about your struggles with warm handoffs. One of
Great.
the things that she was sharing is that at the warm handoffs, when the clients are under the misunderstanding of what the groups and the programs that they're going into, that it's for a
Yep.
whole year, that's a problem because that's not a whole year. It's up to a year, and it's 90 days with recertification, whether or not you
Right.
qualify for it or not. So if those things are not reiterated every single month during your service plan, meeting with them every month to meet their goals, and reiterated every single month what the agreement is and what the agreement is not, that client will always be on their toes to know what it is so that they won't have the misconceptions, as well as making sure that the warm handoffs got the right information for the program that they are referring them to is very, very important because updates are happening all the time. So we case managers are always having to do the this is this is not a year, this is not for free. You don't keep the same amount of 30% for the whole year. So those things are not being reiterated properly from the warm handoffs. And so it gives them the misconceptions what the programs are. So if we're all on the same page at intake, then they have a good idea of what the programs are, and they'll have uh, a better way
Yeah.
to start that race
So they
as
can
success.
affirmatively select the program. I do think that's true, and I don't think that shelters and outreach always have all the information. And I think that's something that people were very clear we need to correct. Though you're right, the program information changes a lot. A lot this year has changed, right? So that I think that one of the things is we have to assume that we're going to have to correct some information, right? Because shelters have a lot on their plates and they're not always going to keep up to date, but we want to make an effort to keep them up to date and be clear that the expectation of shelter providers and anybody that refers in is that, to the best of their ability, people have an understanding of the program. And I really think that this exit planning, which shelters will get a copy of, and that happens at the warm handoff. You're going to fill it out at the warm handoff. I think that that's really going to help focus the conversation. But I think that's a really good point is the expectations aren't there, and then that really slows down the process. Thank you. Do you have stuff to add? I'm sorry. I didn't want to. No, I think that was great. Okay. Anybody else? Have you been doing warm handoffs? Are they helpful? What has been helpful about them? Yep.
I think I'm sorry. In my
Hey,
group,
Danielle.
we did speak. There was a young lady, Brianna. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it right, and if I messed it up, I apologize. But she had been working in the rapid rehousing field for a while, and she did feel like warm handoffs were beneficial. But I did explain to her that it hasn't happened for me as of yet, because
Okay.
traditionally when I get them. However, I do look forward to experiencing them because I believe it'll be where you get more information about an individual up front, and I think that'd be great. Also, I think the reiteration of the documentation, because I downloaded it and printed it already, that you shared earlier in the chat,
Mm-hmm.
just to like, yes, we go over it from the beginning when we meet our
Mm-hmm.
participants, but like when we go over our recertifications every 3 months, maybe to bring it back out again and maybe even
Oh,
redo it
absolutely.
again, because maybe
Absolutely.
that will be beneficial to them to kind of like, because they might feel like they forgot. And
Yep.
it's kind of like bringing it back to you again.
Yep.
But I
And
do,
I also think that we need to revisit it every chance we get,
right.
right? But that absolutely a recertification. It's interesting, Danielle, that one of the things that people have been doing is pairing a similar document, though nobody has this exact document, pairing a similar document to when people are paying more rent. So some places for rapid rehousing that people pay a percentage of an increasing percentage of the rent itself, and that they pair it with that every 3 months. And
Yeah,
that,
because that definitely does happen at Columbus House.
yep. So that's great. So that people are prepared. The other thing we want to do is we want to be trauma informed, but we also want to be clear, right? And that, believe it or not, people like structure, even case management, right? And I was not ever a big fan of paperwork, but it's growing on me. And it grew on me as a caseworker because it led to people being more consistent and also to the people we serve having more information, right? Is that if we don't let people understand what the expectations are, they can't make an affirmative choice. And that's a problem. And let's be clear, we're not trying to throw people out of housing for this, right? We're trying to put in as many chances as possible. We're trying to hold on to people in housing, but we want people to understand what it is because if they don't, it's not going to work for them. So I think that's absolutely right. And I think the warm handoff can help with that. Anybody else had experiences with warm handoffs? Nope. Okay. Feel free. If it occurs to you later and you want to say something, please. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about exit planning, and I'm going to pull up the exit plan in a minute. It was originally designed, a similar form was originally designed to evaluate extensions, and it works so well that one of the things that we're looking at is expanding it. And as you said, doing it on a regular basis during the program, but also doing it at intake. That I said this before, but the program saw progress after this process, and that it creates those expectations and a predictable process for rapid rehousing. And everybody remembers, trauma-informed care, that people need control, but they also need a predictable process. So this is trauma-informed. It also triggers a housing problem-solving conversation, right? Because another thing that happens is people get stuck on one option, which is not unusual for people who've been in crisis a lot. I just want a Section 8 voucher, or I'm just going back to the shelter, or something like that, right? And we want to expand people's options and help them with problem-solving skills, right? Because that will keep them in good stead in the future, but it would also help them make decisions. So we're gonna pair it with housing problem solving. It also is often, and we talked about that, paired with uh, a step down in rent payments. So I'm gonna pull up, and you got to tell me, Liz, if you can see this. Can you see this? Yes? Okay. All right, let me make this a little bigger. I don't know what I'm doing here. All right. Okay, here we go. Not making it bigger, but making it. All right. So this is a form for Connecticut Rapid Housing Exit Plan form. Now remember, when we're doing this form is shelters will have it before people are referred to rapid rehousing so they can sort of go over it with people. This will be done at the warm handoff when people are being referred into the program, and being done at a decided upon interval once people are in the program to give them the tools to realign, right? Nobody expects a plan that you did day one to be the exact same plan you're going to do all along. We're going to modify this plan, we're going to figure it out, but it's also a way to explain to people what the expectations of the program. So you're going to start with some basic demographics, and you're going to start with household composition, HMIS ID, date that you came in, employment, what are their monthly income, right? It immediately focuses stuff on income. Okay. And there will be some people with zero income. If people are employed, are there any upcoming changes, number of hours they work a week? We're going to get to what they want, right? If they're unemployed, when did they have a last job? You're trying to suss out if people can get employed. What are the earnings and the hours, if not full time? Have they ever worked full time, right? And how long have they been job searching? And then you're going to add something to this. Okay, I just want to remind people that this is the shelter and outreach worker and the rapid rehousing caseworker helping the person fill out this form. So they should have more information, and we're asking them for that information, right? Then we're going to get to an income strategy, okay? So the expectation is being reinforced that people are going to have to increase their income. If there's a specific plan, what do they want to do, right? So we learned this in the shelters as we started asking people what's their plan to end their homelessness, and we found 60% of people had a plan, right? So we're asking people what's their plan to increase their income. Is it always going to be a good plan? No, right? But you've got something to work on. We've got something they think they can do. It's going to identify some of their strengths. That's important. So if they have a plan to increase their income, and what is their expected monthly income, right? And when can we expect that to happen? Everybody's not going to hit it. This is going to be a little aspirational. That's okay, right? This is a process. All right. After we have the income conversation, we're going to have the housing conversation. What are their housing options? Notice there's more than one. What's the estimated monthly rent? We're also going to talk about that. What's the estimated utilities, total monthly housing costs, percentage of income that's going to the housing costs, right? And we're going to integrate the fact that they're going to pay more every month into this form. if that's where the way you're going, or otherwise how much they're paying right now and how much they're expected to pay at the end. So, which housing option is the most realistic to become self-sufficient in less than 9 months? To be able to pay your rent and your costs in less than 9 months, what's the housing option that's going to be self-sufficient, right? Once again, people are going to be aspirational. They may not choose the most realistic housing option at first, right? We're going to try to negotiate that. We're going to try to explain it to people, but we're also going to be prepared to rework their housing option. Which housing option and which is it within your budget, right? If shared housing, will there be roommates? Often people choose a housing option for aspirational employment goals. That's okay. If anticipated housing costs exceed 70% of the income, please attach a budget. We've got some budgets you can use, right? Got some budgets you can use, which are aspirational, but also take into account their income increasing and what they will have. So it also helps people. The aspiration part is they're going to have money for more than just rent, which is something we want. So then you want a list of current or their anticipated supports. What are their strengths in these categories? Obtaining and maintaining housing and also income generation, right? Listing other connections, things like employment programs, that sort of stuff. And then their targeted housing date. So you guys have some comments? What do you think? Okay, so this was given to the supervisors about a month ago and 2 months ago, and people talked about maybe sharing it with some case managers. Has anybody tried this form in their program? No? Okay,
Yes, I have.
thanks,
Um,
Liz.
of course, yes.
Great,
It
please
was
do.
given to us probably last month, I believe, and I have
Yeah,
been trying to use it. It gets a little tricky, I feel, when it comes to because when they're already housed,
yeah.
what are your housing options? And I get it. It's, when you get out of this program that we are in now, like to sustain permanent support, permanent housing. Um, so yeah, so sometimes a lot of the questions when I asked, about, your housing options, they're thinking, well, this is my housing option. This is where I'm at. So it's like actually making them think outside the box. What are you gonna do? Like if, moving forward after we're no longer, assisting you with the program, how are you gonna sustain your housing moving forward when I'm not here anymore? You know,
Well, part of the Lulu, tell me here. So part of the question is, would your current housing, this is my housing option. Do you like this housing? Yes.
right,
Is your current option sustainable without the subsidy?
right. Yeah, that is.
So
And
that's
it
a
gets
hard
confusing. It
conversation.
is. It is. Yeah. And this is where I get stuck at, with them. And sometimes it's like, they don't have an answer. They're confused when I bring this up. It's like, well, this is it. Like this is what you're supposed. And I try to like, no,
Yeah.
moving forward, like what are you gonna do to continue on with your permanent housing?
It is, look, it's a really hard conversation. You're right. And that the last thing I ever wanted was to scare one of the people I was working with. And I know that people are going to be scared when we bring this up. Hopefully, if we can start it early, it won't be so scary, right? And they'll have coping mechanisms. But we have to bring it up because it's better now than at the end when they can do nothing about it, right? And that part of this is pushing that what's your plan? Really, this question is what's your plan to sustain it? If you can't sustain this housing, what are your other options, right? And that it's really about, in AA, they say bring the bottom up, right? And sometimes it's only when the program is absolutely going to end that people actually believe it. And the part of this task is getting people to believe it before then, because then they can do something about it, right? I know it's
Another,
hard.
sorry, another question. Is this exit plan a monthly? Do we introduce it
Well,
monthly
that's
when we
something we're going to
visit?
talk about.
Okay.
It could be, I mean, I thought about it as a case manager when I would apply it. I would probably do it monthly. I will say that the supervisors are a little worried about that. So let's talk about like when it should be applied, considering your program. Um, Most people are probably going to apply it every 3 months, but I think that that's part of the evaluation. Do we want to apply it on a more regular basis? I actually agree that monthly would probably be better. But let's see, right? Let's see. So, Jill, you guys have also tried it?
Yeah, we just started using it, and the nice thing was that I think we used it with a young woman who was just entering the program.
Great. Okay.
And I described it to her as in the sense of, had she ever been involved with herself or with a family or friend in discharge planning from a hospital?
Yep.
Same thing. If you've ever experienced that, if you've ever been in the hospital, you're there, you just got in the bed, they haven't even done anything to you yet,
Right.
and here comes the discharge planner.
Yeah.
But that is so that you have an idea right off the bat
Yeah.
what the goals are in order to get you back healthy and home.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is the same thing. This is the same exact thing. Why are we talking about exit planning today? This is why. Because our goal is to get you independent as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the goal. Let's see what we need to do to help you meet that goal. So I think the client received it fairly well. She's lucky, I have to say. She's gainfully employed.
Okay.
And I know that's a huge advantage.
That is a huge
And
advantage.
I should say,
But that's good. That's a good
she's
way.
gainfully employed in a well-paying job.
Nice.
So yeah, not just someone who's getting and full time. So kind of, I got the perfect client for kind of in a way.
Yeah, no, I think that really works, but that teaches us something, right? And she wasn't surprised by it. Was the shelter worker there or no?
I never once met with the shelter worker.
Okay. Okay. All right. So you just did the plan, and was she surprised?
No, because we set the tone. My colleague and I, the first time we met with her,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have this form the first time we met with her.
Sure.
But we set the tone at that meeting for the expectations, right from the beginning, that this is not a permanent program. This is a time limited program. This is 1 year. This other kinds of things, we want to help you with. I found this a little off the subject. I found with housing searches with her, keeping her expectations in the sense of, are you going to be able to afford this once the program doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah.
So being the newbie on the block, I was kind of looking at it a little differently, as in I'm going to look for rentals that I know with your income right now, you could independently afford,
Mm-hmm.
and not make that be the majority of your income either.
Yeah, and having that conversation is really important. But you're right; it's a great luxury that they did have some income. When somebody's income is, $2, right?
Yeah,
it's tough to do that. But okay.
Yep.
So that's really helpful. And so you found it helpful. So this is the other question. Do you think it's helpful? Do you think it's a helpful guide, particularly for people to explain the expectations of the program?
I think it is. I think that it's a great way to be able to, like they do in a hospital, right from the beginning, explain that you're not going to be here for 3 weeks. You're not going to be here for 2 weeks, and letting the patient know right off the bat that in your brain, you might be thinking, I'm so sick right now, I'm going to be here 2 weeks. And they're letting you know right off the bat, listen, you're going to be here maybe 3 days. And if you can't go home, then we're going to look at, maybe some kind of supportive placement at a SNF or something, and then home. But I think this sets the tone for this is today, but the ending is what we're going to be looking at too. We're not just looking at this beginning. We're right now actively looking at that ending so that you can be successful.
Yeah. That's great. I think that's really helpful. So Ms. Smith, I think, said, put something in the chat. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to discuss this, but would it possible to talk a little bit about having conversations with landlords regarding clients no longer being a part of rapid rehousing and still being unable to afford their unit? That is an important conversation, and that is certainly people's hesitation, right? But that it's probably not this session. What we want to do is take the process and then talk about the landlords is really a separate conversation, but we can absolutely have that conversation. Because I think it's an important part of it. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. Jesus. I don't know why this won't do this. There we go. All right. I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint, I think. Yes. All right. What I want to do is divide people up into groups. I don't know how much time you have. How about we give it like 10 minutes? But if people are done sooner, just feel free to come back. And I know people have talked a lot about this, but I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to really weigh in. So, any questions, reflections, reactions to the exit plan? Have you tried it? We talked about that, but I'm sure everybody who tried it is not hasn't talked about it. Do you have suggestions on how to improve it? So, we're going to divide people up into groups. Liz is going to pause the. Welcome back. So, what'd you guys think? Reflections, comments, were they the same as came up in the general session? Did you have any different ones? Had people tried it and saw different things?
I think that from what our group is that we've actually tried the different things, but along the client's journey, they fell off because they may have lost their job. So now you're trying to help them rebuild their confidence to go ahead and try again and work harder. And it's getting closer to the time that they're going to be released. And so it makes the crunch even worse for them because they thought that they were able to do it and now they can't. And it's like, nope, yes, you can. We did it. We already worked this hard. And like I shared with a young lady, knowing that you have up to a year, let's work on those mini goals. I call them mini goals because you want to get a housing. Now, okay, we've gotten the housing. You've already set your apartment up. Everything looks good. Now, the next couple of weeks, every week, we're going to start writing down different jobs that we want to go ahead and do. Now we go ahead, we found a jobs opportunity. Now we're going to go ahead the next 3 months, we're going to work on now going there, visiting the places, talking to the managers, putting ourselves out there, letting them see us, making those little goals look like great accomplishments. By month 6, they're already now employed. And now you're working out, okay, now we're going to start saving. Let's build that financial account because in 3 more months, we may have to be on our own handlers by ourselves. And so by a year, they feel like I can do this because I have saved this much money and I've been doing so well. But what happens sometimes at month 9, they lose their job.
Yep.
And so that's what ends up happening and it becomes a challenge. But at the same time, you're still letting them know you come this far, you work this hard, you can go ahead and do this. We're not going to stop yet. But at the same time, understand at the end of that year, at 12 months, we do have to stop. But this could be an extenuating circumstance. We may have to extend you another 3 months. But let's see what happens if that is the case. And so those are things you want to reach when you reach that bridge.
So the idea is that people are working on it, so you can be more flexible when people are actually doing the work, right? So that's something that this clocks. I also think that one of the things that we want to do is we don't just want to be, you can do this job stuff, but you also want to introduce considering other housing options. And I realize that creates a problem with the landlords, and we're definitely going to talk about that. But if we don't talk about other housing options, they can redo their housing, right? And that's something we want people to consider because, I mean, they're worried about it, right? And it can't be the only remedy is to extend. The only remedy is we pay for it. It has to be also, okay, what can I change here to make it possible for me to live in the community? So we want to really broaden that out.
Well, understand they also during that time frame, they're always putting in low income applications to
Yeah.
different areas in the can. They're
Yeah.
also looking at what, even though they may have wanted a 2 bedroom at one point, they may have to downsize to a 1 bedroom at the end of
Yep.
that year if need be. So those are always on the table in that sense.
Great.
I'm sorry I wasn't clear, but
No,
this
no,
is
no.
the process
I
of what
figured.
we do because we want to make sure that they know there are low income opportunities. There are opportunities of Habitat for Humanity to go ahead and help build your own house when you get to a certain point. So there's
Okay,
always
so
options.
So what kind of recommendation would you have to trigger that conversation? It may be part of how you're operating and how your agency is operating, but what would trigger that conversation for all case managers, right? We're trying to get this to be consistent.
When a client has a family, I have a family, for instance, that says, I one day want to have my own home. That's an initial conversation from intake. So that's always on my mind. What are you doing to build up to that? So that's a long-term goal that I'm always saying, well, this could add to your long-term goal. Looking at different options
Okay.
of housing
So
and putting
moving
them
it to
on
the
their
long
plate.
term, I think that that's that question. Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else? Do you have any conversations? No? Okay. All right. So I'm going to move us past that. We're running out of time, so we're going to have to move some stuff. The other thing, and I want to do this really quickly, is to talk about people's housing goals. And one of the things that we just had a conversation about is we also want to introduce what are your other housing options? And setting those housing goals both before people move into housing, but you had brought up even when people are in housing in terms of their final goal, we want to take a look at their preferences, and this is a way to talk about it. Okay. So when people start to reach for housing, we want to know why they want that housing. We want to integrate that, and then we want to structure the conversation. We want to talk about what people care most about, but most importantly, we want to use a preferences worksheet, even when people are already in housing, in terms of their long-term goals, because we want to be able to negotiate people with housing preferences. This helps you broaden the conversation. So, and you can think about what can be postponed. Khadija just said that is that, maybe this isn't your final goal, but your final goal, your housing, owning your own house, that's your final goal. We're gonna work on that. We're gonna lead up to that, but it's not going to be happening right now. We want to address and we want to evaluate the housing options. We want them to problem solve around them. So there is a housing preferences worksheet attached, and I'm going to show it to you as part of this. I can do it like this. All right. So you see how this is set up. So if you look at the columns, I want to direct your attention to it. It asks people in terms of all their preferences, where am I now? What would I love? What's my dream? What's my aspiration? And what would I accept? Right? What could I make work? So basically, this is meant to set you up to negotiate housing preferences, not just when they first come in, but also what their long-term preference is, right? We probably want to fool around a little bit, right? About the categories on the left-hand side, but we're going to ask about location, we're going to ask about unit type, we're going to ask about if they're going to go into something else and maybe they're considering a board and care or something like that, access to transportation, proximity to others. So think about it. Anybody here moved recently? No? Did you get everything you wanted? Had a new job, done any change? The reality is you probably got a couple of your priorities and you probably didn't get a couple of your priorities. So we want to prioritize this list and then we want to negotiate with people. Shared housing or this shared housing or living with your sister hits a couple of these priorities and then hits a couple of your lesser priorities. But you know what? And I mean, financial stuff should be added to this list. Would this help you give a structure about what people are considering? Remember, it's from the perspective of what their preferences are, and then you're going to negotiate it. You're definitely steering this conversation, not unlike motivational interviewing, right? We're steering a little bit, but, right? It's the person's preferences. It's not coercive.
Hi, I'm sorry, can you make it a little bigger?
Yeah, maybe not. You know what? If you look at your PowerPoint, oh, that doesn't help, right? Oh. Um, if you look at your PowerPoint, it's attached to your PowerPoint, so you can see it better. All right, now I know how to get back. Oh, good. All right.
I want to say I see what the attempt is to do here, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, all the forms and all the paperwork at some point where it's becoming white noise.
I know.
It's becoming something that they
I
just
know.
feel like they have to get through with you and
Mm-hmm.
not really take. So I
Yeah, I think it's a
having
good
not
point,
used it,
and
I don't know.
I think we want to eliminate that, but I'll tell you frankly, is one of the things is we've been talking this and everybody's been talking back and forth and how what works for people. And one of the things that I'm hearing is it's not being consistently applied. And putting out forms and stuff like that is one way to get things consistently applied. Some of these are easier conversations than others, right? And we're thinking about making it mandatory, let's say the exit plan at intake, but talk about when people can use it and talk about when the schedule is. Yeah, we don't want it to become white noise. Nobody wants it to become white noise, but we're also worried about the consistency. And we've been trying parts of this stuff without the forms for about a year, right? We recognize this problem of people not having those expectations. So we're probably throwing all of it. Could we cut down on paperwork? Yes. Right? But but it's a fragile balance. You know what I mean?
Andrea, Katie has her hand up, and I'm also
Great.
noticing it's 11:30. So,
Oh,
just
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear. So with this training, like the expectation moving forward is that prior to enrolling a household that's referred
Correct.
to your rapid rehousing project, that you are completing that exit plan with them so that they fully understand what the program is and have like informed agreement to participate in this program. So we're kind of looking, we're trying to see if they have like a realistic exit plan. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to increase their income. There's other, as you guys know, other
Right.
creative ways of, having a realistic housing plan. So, and if folks, as other folks had said, if, somebody's really just interested in a voucher, it's having then that informed discussion with them and like their current case manager through shelter, et cetera, about, well, what are the other options? There's not really other options, unfortunately, in this
Right.
system. So, it's having those conversations so that then when they're enrolling, they're completely agreeing. And we talked about this form, like we can have that discussion moving forward about when else to redo the exit plan. But, for now, we want you to continue doing the housing stabilization plan for those shorter term action steps and the 90-day recert forms, which is really a way to like revisit this exit plan and see what's going well, what's not, and like what changes need to be made.
Yep. Okay. So I am not going to take up your time. We're going to talk about motivation, and then we are going to talk about the housing plan next time. We're also going to give you guys a diagram to negotiate other options, right? That is, and remember, what's going to be required, and we said this, is the exit plan at intake before people come in, right? At this point, and that you have a requirement to do already to do the housing plan. But the other stuff is meant to support that, and we're going to talk about that, whether it works, what it needs, right? How can we best serve you guys to be able to serve the clients and be consistent? So I am going to wrap it up. The next session in the series is May 19th. And we haven't set a date yet, but we will do a session with shelters, and we're going to take some of the next session to talk to you about key elements that you want talked about with shelters. But remember, this is a cooperative process, and that shelters talking about what rapid rehousing is not going to completely solve the problem, right? So it'll help, right? We're trying to chip off stuff. So we are going to talk about that next time, but this is the plan. And then I think I'm done, right?
I think
Yeah.
you're good. Andrea, I just want to do a quick plug. If you can take a moment, anyone who did not get an invite, any new staff, anyone who just should be invited to this, who didn't receive the invite, please throw the email into the chat, and I will make sure that you get invited to the next one. And we're trying to keep up. We know there's lots of turnover, but we want to make sure everybody gets invited. Thank you. Thank you.
So you do have the slides in the chat, and Liz is also going to post them. Where do you post them, Liz?
So sorry. At the boss website, but I'll send an email out with the slides and the recording to all the folks that I have on a list.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah. So you'll have the recording if you want to use it. Wonderful. And we're good. And I just want to thank you guys and thank you for really participating in this. We really appreciate it. And I think that a lot of your colleagues really appreciate it. It's great to hear these ideas, and you guys are the experts on this. Thank you.